Williams' Ecopedia, Arcology to Xeriscaping. This book is dedicated to all the pioneers who have and still are working hard to lay the foundations for a sustainable future. With special thanks for all the pioneers from Arcosanti and Lost Valley. Williams' Ecopedia, Volume 1, Topics in Sustainability from Arcology to Xeriscaping, Container Gardens, page 39. Container gardens are plants grown inside of containers rather than being planted in the ground. This method of growing has many benefits when used appropriately. Creating container gardens is a relatively simple technique that can be used to add sustainable gardening to any existing place or structure, even when land for growing is not available or unhealthy for plants. With the proper use of container gardens, you can produce more yield on a small plot or produce yield from a plot that otherwise would not be usable for agriculture. You can produce specialty crops to augment your food supply and beautify existing places. All in all, container gardening is an excellent technique for those who wish to use some elbow grease to add meaningful agricultural production into their home or local area. With container gardens, there's less risk of soil-borne disease spreading among crops. They virtually eliminate weed problems and allow for better control over moisture, sunlight, and other conditions. Container gardens are an excellent tool for urban agriculture, where the local area is too built up to allow for the planting of extensive crops. With container gardens, homeowners and renters can grow crops on their porches, decks, and roofs. Cities could grow edible crops in container gardens along the sidewalks in the downtown area. Roofs can be turned into viable agricultural production areas. Types of containers. Really, anything that can hold soil and water can be used as a container for a garden. The containers can range from old tubs, buckets, old sinks, old refrigerators tipped on their backs, fountains, metal or wood troughs. Conventional flower and plant pots can be used as containers as well. They can be simple or as ornate as you wish. They can be as small or as large as you wish. Large containers can even house small trees. The technique for creating a container garden is relatively the same regardless of the container. The main issue is drainage. If you do not allow water to drain from your container, your plants may likely die of root rot caused by soaking in the water. If your container does not already have drainage holes in it, you may need to create some. Fill the bottom of the container with a few inches of gravel or sand, then cut holes in the container right above the gravel line, then fill the container with good soil, then plant your plants. I advise to never forget the aesthetics of your container garden. Yes, I completely endorse and encourage the reuse of old materials such as tubs, metal troughs, or other refuse for containers, but you don't want your container garden to look like Fat Albert and the gang decided to grow some tomatoes. You can decorate the immediate surroundings of the containers and even pay aesthetic detail to the structure of the container itself. The container garden, made from reused materials, can be ecologically efficient, agriculturally productive, as well as aesthetically beautiful. The wading pool garden. The most brilliant system for container gardens and rooftop gardening I have ever seen is the kiddie pool garden. That's right, a kiddie pool. The small plastic pools you buy at Myers or Kmart or Walmart or whatever your local source for cheap mass-produced plastic crap is. At this point, I have not myself made a kiddie pool garden, but I am chomping at the bit to experiment with this. The technique is simple. Buy a plastic kid's wading pool of whatever size you desire. About 4 to 6 inches up from the bottom, make holes about every 2 feet around the perimeter. Fill the pool with gravel or sand up to the holes. Fill the rest with soil. Plant your plants. When you water the plants, water them until water begins to pee out of the holes and then stop. One of the features of this system making it a more efficient growing environment is that the drainage water is collected in the bottom of the pool, becoming something of an aquifer. This water supply then works back up into the soil. In essence, you are catching and reusing your drainage water, something you can't do in ground planted crops. The creator of this technique claims that the plastic wading pool is the most cost-efficient container available. An average wading pool provides approximately 28 square feet of growing area for under $10 and is capable of producing up to 40 pounds of produce per growing season. Over a 10-year period, if you accrue the total cost of everything you need, $30 for the pool, soil, transplants, and seed, it comes to 8 cents per pound of food grown. Because of the larger surface area of the kiddie pool container, you can grow a decent-sized yield, especially if you have multiple pool gardens, using the container garden as a viable supply of food. To learn more, go to www.artsforall.com/ELCA/page2.html. Some tips for a more efficient container garden. Community. In nature, no system stands alone, and neither should you. You can get together with friends and neighbors and all coordinate your container garden efforts. There is strength in numbers, and just as in companion planting, diversity produces a healthier and more beautiful yield. So too will your container gardens if you are part of a community of people working together. Together, you can all share knowledge and ideas. You can all get together to help each other out with physically building and installing projects. By coordinating your plant palettes, you can each grow certain crops and then come together to share and swap. Connect the overflows. All container gardens need drainage. If you can, design your whole system so the overflow from the container drains into another. The easiest way to achieve this is to stack and cluster your containers together or to build a container garden on shelves. The clustered container garden will more efficiently use water as well as make more of an aesthetic impact. If you wish to get really fancy, you can incorporate flow forms into the design of your container garden cluster. The container gardens can also be placed in existing ground gardens, so the overflow drainage will then water the ground-based crops below. Ease of transplant. Use burlap sacks if you plan on removing and transplanting the crop. If, for example, you're using the container garden as a starter garden and you will want to transplant the crop in soil, place a burlap sack in the container so you can easily remove the entire thing and place it somewhere else. Open the sack, place the rim of the sack on the rim of the container. Place all of your soil and growing medium in the sack inside of the container, then plant your crop. When it comes time to transplant, dig your crops a new home in the earth, lift the entire sack out of the container and place it in the new hole. The burlap will eventually degrade away. This method reduces the shock on your plant, increasing its chances of living through the transplant. Companion planting and plant gills. Companion planting is the usage of different types of plants in close proximity. These groupings are often referred to as plant guilds. There are many benefits from companion planting, also called polycropping. Some plants, especially herbs, can subtly enhance the flavor of other edible plants in their guild. Multiple plants in one space increases the odds that some yield can survive harsh growth season or catastrophic conditions. Plants which grow at different heights can help benefit each other by providing things such as shade, windbreaks, or trellis for another plant. Companions can provide good nitrogen fixation for their companions. Some plants naturally repel pests and insects, protecting the entire guild. Other plants attract or are inhabited by beneficial insects or animals such as ladybugs or the good nematode. You must research the exact plants suitable for your local environment to produce effective plant guilds in your container garden. Grow food. Most examples of container gardens show them being used for pretty flowers and other adornments. One of the major principles of permaculture is to always produce a yield. If you desire a container garden to pretty up your area, be aware of the fact that many useful and edible plants are very pretty and produce useful products. Container gardens can be used to grow herbs, teas, salad ingredients, medicinal plants, or sweets such as strawberries or grapes. Rainwater harvesting. The container can be placed so it can catch the rainwater runoff from a roof or other structure. You do not want the rainwater to rest in the container garden, but rather to pass through the container garden and then move on, perhaps ending in a reservoir or water containment of some sort or going directly into the ground. See, connect the overflows. You just have to think of rainwater from your roof as one of the overflows to connect. Systems thinking and innovation. Nothing in nature stands alone, and neither should your container garden. When thinking about this concept, think about the other systems that work in your environment to identify their strengths and weaknesses, and discover how these systems can be tied together to benefit each other. The container garden system has strengths and benefits that can be tied in with the rest of your local environment, be that environment natural or artificial, outdoors or indoors. Observe your local area and try to discover new and innovative ways to tie all the systems together with the container garden. Also, try to think of new uses of the container garden itself that are appropriate for your uses and your local environment. Innovate and experiment. Appropriate usage for container gardens. The concept of appropriate usage is a necessary component in any sustainable and ecological design. Whatever the technique or technology, one must determine its appropriate uses and then apply the technique or technology where it is best suited and avoided where other techniques or technologies better fit the circumstances. What are the appropriate uses for a container garden? A mobile garden for a person who primarily rents and may move every year or so, making it difficult to start and maintain a garden. By creating container gardens, you can literally pick your garden up and move it with you when your lease is up. As starter beds for plants that are very delicate when in their adolescence. Creating ADA gardening beds for the elderly or disabled. It may be physically impossible to constantly bend or kneel to a garden. With container gardens, you can bring the crops up to levels that can be worked on. For growing in interior spaces. On no-earth surfaces such as flat rooftops, parking lots, or decks. Places where the earth is not suitable for planting. When growing specialty crops that may have specific soil requirements, you can easily control the soil content of the container. When growing specialty plants that may not be well suited to the weather of your local environment, the container can be used as the structural basis for cold frames, small greenhouse-like structures, or other environment-tempering structures. Of course, with innovation and systems thinking, you may discover an appropriate use of container gardens not listed here. If you do, share that discovery with your community. The website below is an excellent resource for more information on creating and maintaining container gardens, though I felt it did not address agricultural container gardens enough. www.gardenguides.com/how-to/tipstechnique/container-indoor/8rules.asp. Regard it as just as desirable to build a chicken house as to build a cathedral. Frank Lloyd Wright. Form follows function. That has been misunderstood. Form and function should be one joined in spiritual union. Frank Lloyd Wright. It's difficult to think anything but pleasant thoughts while eating a homegrown tomato. Lewis Grizzard. Thank you.